Come on, Livingston. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Road is long.
Can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead!
Man, can score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates! And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We gotta go.
Hello and welcome back to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to everything Livingston Football Club and Scottish football. My name is Angus and today I'm joined only by Euan. How are you doing, Euan?
Well, good, mate. Had a slightly eventful weekend, which we were just chatting about there. I won't go into too much detail. I'll tell you what, give the listeners a laugh. So, was out in Edinburgh Saturday during the day, and fell asleep on the train on the way home, and ended up in Glasgow Queen Street, and ended up paying a small fortune to get a taxi home. So, to say I was in a bad mood going to the game yesterday was a bit of an understatement, and I'm still in a bit of a bad mood. But I'm sure everyone else, I know Andy and Callum Moore, who obviously both did this podcast, find it extremely entertaining when I told them that the game yesterday. So, and I'm sure Angus enjoyed hearing about it as well. But yeah, that's the gist of mine. And then the football just kind of put the real dampener on my entire weekend. What about you, mate?
Doing all right. Very boring weekend compared to yourself, but yeah, I think I'd much rather be in my shoes at the weekend than yours, to be honest. But as always,
I'm the exact same. I'd much rather be in your shoes as well.
As always, you can find this episode as well as all of our others on your preferred podcast streaming sites. Just search for Talk Livi, so follow us or subscribe to ensure that you don't miss another episode.
We'll start the episode off by discussing our defeat to those ravenous Bears as Livi's unbeaten run comes to an end.
It's the start of a busy run of games as the Lions head north in midweek to take on Aberdeen.
And finally, we'll discuss our next home game as the Jam Tarts make the short trip to West Lothian.
On a cold Sunday afternoon, the champions came to town looking to impress their new manager Giovanni van Bronckhorst. It would end in defeat for the Lions as their unbeaten run comes to an end. Euan, what did you think of the match itself?
Yeah, it was quite a strange game, I thought. I think our first half performance was actually very good, certainly in a kind of an offensive manner in terms of going forward. But Rangers obviously brought a deadlock early doors. The Arfield goal, really poor from our point of view defensively. Nobody's picked up the run, and Arfield running from he runs about 20 yards and nobody's caught onto it at any point, and he's got the freedom of the Tony Mack to go and lob Max. And don't get me wrong, he's taking it well, but it's not ideal when you play Rangers that you go a goal down so early on. And what's even less ideal is when you go a couple goals down very early on. And I think it was becoming quite a theme that Rangers were holding their width really well. Kent and Hadji were hugging the touchlines, and when Rangers took 4 or 5 passes out the game and played a kind of quick diagonal out to Kent in particular, it was causing us a lot of problems. I think Jack McMillan had a really tough afternoon up against Ryan Kent, gave him far too much space out that side, and the second goal kind of comes again from that. It's a diagonal out to Kent. 2 players go out to close him down and leave Morelos unmarked in the box, who then rolls it into Aribo. And again, credit to Aribo because it's an outstanding finish. And when you're 2-0 down to the Old Firm so early on, you're kind of fearing the worst. But I do think we reacted. Obviously, between the two goals, Odin Bailey had a good chance, which was saved by McGregor, and we managed to get ourselves back in the game. We spoke about it in the previews, me and Bruni, that getting in behind Rangers is where they're vulnerable. Space in behind the full-backs and behind the centre-halves. They've not been coping with that particularly well this season, and that's where the goal comes from. Fitzwater's it's a great ball over the top. Great first touch by your man, Alan Forrest. Forces the save from McGregor, and it's really well followed up by Bruce, who I thought was excellent. I thought, in fact, our front three in the first half I thought were really good. Bailey, Forrest and Anderson. I think they caused Rangers a lot of problems. And to be honest, I think we really should have gone in at half-time level, and I don't think it would have been unjust either. Bailey, it's a good cross in, and Forrest, you've really got to put it away. I think the ball, because it's taken a little nick off somebody's head on the way through, I think it's ended up behind Al, and he's kind of trying to hook it back across, and he's not maybe got the contact he wants in it. But it's a great save by Alan McGregor, because he's going the wrong way and kind of flicks it over the bar. But second half, I think Rangers kind of really toyed with us a little bit. To be honest, I think they were very dominant in the second half and didn't really give us any hope in the second half. And I think the change that we made when Shinnie went up top and Anderson came off, I think really killed it for us in terms of having any real out ball and doing what we were doing in the first half, which was getting in behind them and causing them problems. And obviously when Shinnie comes on, you're very much less likely to do that. I saw that David did tweak it eventually and put Forrest through the middle. And Rangers had chances. Max has made a couple of saves, one from Aribo. There was a save from Hadji as well, kind of snapshot in the box. But the third goal's the killer, and it's defensively by far and away the worst out of the three for us, because how you can allow a centre forward an unchallenged header in the middle of your 6-yard box from a corner is beyond me. It's such poor defending. Holtby's not jumped, not challenged him. And then I don't think Max covers himself in glory for it either, to be totally honest with you. And that's the game over and done with at that point. You've got 12 minutes to go when they've got that third, and the game's dead and buried. But looking at the first half, I think the first half was really positive. Certainly, me and Bruni were talking about it, how the games at Ibrox this season, we've not laid a glove on Rangers, and I think we showed a little bit about ourselves in the first half, in particular going 2 down as early as we did to get ourselves back in the game and make a contest of it. But second half, I think we were up against it. We really struggled to get a foothold in the game. We didn't retain the possession very well in the second half, and maybe it was all down to the snowballs at halftime. Maybe that's what it was, and caught us off guard, and we were a bit cold going into that second half. But what was your thoughts on it, Angus?
Yeah, very much kind of the same. It's not very often you kind of come away from a 3-1 game feeling somewhat, kind of optimistic, but I definitely did, in all honesty. Obviously, throughout this season, we've talked about certain things and, how things haven't been great at times, but I feel like yesterday's performance doesn't really merit any criticism at all. I feel like the effort that was put in and just the way that we played as well, I think everybody was a wee bit surprised at, how kind of attacking that we went out. And I think seeing that starting lineup straight away, it seemed as if, we were going to have, somewhat of a go at it. Obviously, the first 12 minutes made it seem, or the first 15, 20 minutes we went 2-0 down, made it seem as if it was going to be, a very, very, very long day for us. But, full credit to the team, because they never dropped their heads at all, during that. And yeah, the game finished 3-1, and you'd say Rangers controlled most of the second half, but I still think there was a good amount of players who really covered themselves in glory in that game. Obviously, you mentioned the front three who were had a very good first half in particular. I thought Holt and Omiyonga as a midfield too were great. I think Omiyonga, won so much in that middle of the park against one of the best midfields in the league. Really showed his quality. I think it was one of his best games. And Nicky Devlin at the back as well, in particular, the amount of blocks in that he made. Ryan Kent's always going to be a tricky customer, and I think the way that we kind of played, Devlin had that kind of tough issue of, he was kind of playing not really as a proper fullback, sometimes like a right centre half, sometimes he was having to be the one going out, and I thought he dealt with it absolutely tremendously well. So yeah, I'm looking at that team performance, and I'm saying, I'm not looking at anybody and being like that was like a weak link. Obviously, I do agree that the substitutions have killed us a wee bit. I don't think, when Shinnie and Penrice have came on, I don't think they've had the same intensity that, the other side. I don't think McMillan had the best of games, but I thought even just positionally, he was, kind of like solid. He was at least getting kind of back, and he was kind of like covering the right areas. And I feel like Penrice, felt a wee bit, gets like cold when he came on, like had to take a wee while to, kind of get up to it. But obviously the fact that we didn't have the ball didn't really allow him to get in the game at all. But yeah, we went toe to toe with them. It's always what's going to happen though, and this is the prime example is whenever people talk about, why don't teams like Livingston and that go toe to toe with the Old Firm? It's because you see what happens. We end up getting tired out. We make a change and we don't have the quality or we don't have the same kind of personnel that can follow suit and keep that effort up for the whole 90 minutes. And I mean, you look at the first two goals. I mean, that Aribo one's got to be a contender for goal of the season. That's an absolute tremendous finish. I guess people will say, if you don't make that mistake for the third one where, Max should really come and claim it. I think that's the main issue is that our defence feels that he's, coming to claim it and, just doesn't, follow through on it. And then the game, it maybe sets up an interesting, final third of the match. But whenever we play Rangers, it's always anything's a bonus. So I'll take the positives from that performance and feel that if we attack like that against most teams, we're going to pick up a whole lot more points. And we perform like that in a attacking front whenever we play driving the teams who we've got at home. The likes of when we play Hearts at home, we play Hibs at home, and we play Dundee at home at the end of the month and that as well. I would be more than confident that we could cause those teams issues with, the kind of style of football that we were playing there. I think Odin Bailey's really coming into a game and, is a key asset who can cause teams problems. And, Bruce Anderson, I think there's only two players in the league who've contributed more goals this season than him. I think it's Boyle and I think it's Tavernier. So yeah, we've definitely got players who can punish those kind of issues and that. But just against Rangers, it wasn't to be. Who knows if that Alan Forrest one goes in? It's a whole different story. But yeah, I'm not really looking at this with too much of a dampened heart, even though the result was 3-1.
Now, me and Bruni were discussing last week. Obviously, we weren't 100% sure how we'd set up if we'd go to a 4-3-3 or the fact that we've tweaked recently and played a 3 at the back. Davey went with a 3 at the back, Nicky at right centre back again, kind of 3-4-2-1. What did you make of the shape? Does that, as you mentioned, it kind of gave an idea that we were going to have a little bit of a go?
I think that was always kind of the interesting thing is I'm glad that we set up as like a kind of a 3-4-3 rather than like a kind of like a 3-5-2 where we didn't have anybody kind of supporting the strikers. We've kept those kind of wide players. We've had like McMillan and Montano who at times have kind of came in a wee bit to help out the midfield, and yeah, we've had like a proper go at it. I do think it kind of sorts us a wee bit. For a couple of weeks now, like the 4 at the back wasn't necessarily working. Now we've put into decent performances, against St Mirren and Rangers with that back three. It could be the way forward for us. I mean, Obalai will come back as well. It's another decent option to have there. We could maybe get Devlin back into the right wing back position where, it would be even stronger playing for us. It's another key asset that we'd have overlapping the runs on the right hand side. But yeah, it's just good to have that kind of, we know we can switch up between the two and that, we can get equally as good performances out of them.
Yeah, I agree. It's good to have a bit of a plan B because, again, it was maybe something we looked at the start of the season and we were kind of questioning going, we don't really have one. And it's good that we've put in a couple of decent performances playing that system. It is another option. As you say, I think Nicky's playing centre-back because Io's out as well. I think, if Io was back in, I would see Nicky going on to the right-hand side and then you maybe get to see more of what Nicky's really about in terms of getting forward and bombing up and down the line. So, it gives you plenty of options there, which is good. There was obviously a bit of a delay to the second half. Scottish football being prime Scottish football, and Davies come out and criticised the dough balls with the snowballs. What was your take on that?
It was just kind of ridiculous because you can just see, just like watching over at them, and at first it turned out like that they were chucking like snowballs at each other, and I think that's why the stewards kind of like left them to it. But then they just started pelting anything. They were throwing them on the pitch. The photographers who were sitting in front of them were getting a huge bit of grief off of them, which is a bit crap for them. But just the fact like you seen it, like the stewards were just watching all these fans just keep going up and piling it. It's just been simple as like, right, you're doing that, you're out, essentially, because you see what ended up happening in the game, and it was it was ridiculous, and it was just, it always makes you laugh, with like these kind of things that happen. They started like booing that, the game was being delayed and that. It's like, well, stop being wee idiots, and like this is what yous are doing. But when they be like the Old Firm fans, to cause some trouble and then, act as if, nothing had ever happened. But yeah, for a wee bit of time, it was, it was a wee bit funny. But, as it started, the game getting delayed for another 10, 15 minutes in that freezing cold, yeah, the funny side of it soon started to go away. But yeah, it's another good thing to see within Scottish football, a decent wee bit of patter. But next time, let's pick a warmer day to, cause a delay.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't want to be out. I'd obviously told everyone about my weekend exploit, so I'm not going to lie. I was wanting the game to just hurry up and get going again. Yeah, it all seemed pretty good humour to start with, and then it just became a bit of a farce, didn't it? Max obviously wasn't particularly happy, and I can understand some of the lines on the pitch weren't particularly clear because of the amount of snow that had made its way onto the pitch via snowballs, and it was quite funny. Sorry, Nicky Devlin, but Nicky Devlin, I think, got absolutely scudded with one when he was trying to help clear some of the snowballs and hit the deck. That was slightly entertaining, to be honest. Apologies, Nicky. Look, it became a bit of a farce, didn't it? And there's a point where you go, come on, lads, just get a rest and let's get the game going again. But look, it was a disappointing result, but in the end, there were positives to take from the performance, and hopefully we can use that going into what is now a very, very tough run of fixtures starting on Wednesday night up in Aberdeen. As I mentioned there, next up for the Lions is a trip to Pittodrie as we take on Aberdeen in midweek, with the Lions hoping to bounce back and maul the sheep. Angus, how do you see this one going?
I don't know, to be honest, because I feel like Aberdeen are just that kind of a strange side this season. I don't think I've necessarily seen Aberdeen play, too terribly. I feel like most of the games that I've seen them this season, even if they haven't picked up the points, on the ball, that they've actually been pretty solid, and it's just been, a matter of like fine margins that's kind of cost them. I know that, the Aberdeen chairman came out and talked about, how, they've been a wee bit unlucky, but I do genuinely see where he's coming from a wee bit. Obviously Stephen Glass has had a wee bit of pressure, based on like bad results, but I think you can see what he's trying to do with the club and how he wants to take them forward. And yeah, the results haven't been ideal, and if they do get catastrophic, then the pressure will be there. But I feel like if you are kind of any football team and you're looking to make that kind of a big change after, so many years of, the same kind of figure being in charge, then it will take time, and you can't just, have that reactionary moment to, get rid of somebody. So I would say that I've been kind of impressed with Aberdeen watching them. I think watching the first half against Celtic yesterday, I thought that they looked to be quite a threat going forward. The main thing that will be their crux is, their defensive side, because, they've not got any defenders fit, essentially. I think David Bates is, the kind of only centre half they've got. McCrory's back there now. They're still having to play the likes of Johnny Hayes and that fullback, which, they look to have maybe like solved in the summer with a couple of new recruits and a couple of youth players coming through. So, they're a very strange side. Obviously, we've got to be wary of, the kind of threats that they have. I mean, that midfield, Brown, McGeoch and Ferguson, is a team that is a midfield that, can win any battle on any given day. So, there is definitely quality within there. Obviously, Christian Ramirez up top, Marley Watkins, I think, having, a decent time back at the club. But at the same time, I think that there is vulnerabilities within their squad, and, that you can get at them. So I think it is going to be quite an interesting game. Our annual trip away to Aberdeen midweek. Can we talk about how that happens every season for 1 minute? It always seems to happen in December as well. Like, is this how do we always get landed with a fixture away to Aberdeen in December when it's absolutely freezing cold and it takes about 9 hours to get there and back? Don't understand how that we get landed with that every season. But hopefully, the last time we went up there, this time last season, we got a very, very good result that cheered us all up for sure, even though we weren't able to be there. But yeah, it's actually a game that I'm very much looking forward to, and I'm going to have to think of a prediction sometime soon, but right at the moment I'm really toying with it.
Yeah, I mean, just having a glance at the league table there, we are only 2 points behind Aberdeen. Aberdeen only on 15 points, sitting in 8th spot. So for them, considering how consistently they finished in the top four under Derek McInnes in particular, it's not been a particularly great start to the season. And Aberdeen fans have been very, very vocal about that as well. Obviously, our pals on the Red Tinted Glasses podcast, Glenn and Callum, obviously talk about it quite a lot. But they're very hot and cold, Aberdeen. Very, very hot and cold. You get some performances from them where they look very good, and then others where they look pretty bang average. And an example of that is the game against us at the start of the season. Really didn't see an awful lot from them that day, and if it wasn't for a couple of glaring errors on our part, we would have certainly got a result against them. So there's nothing to fear with them. But as you say, they've got problems at the back just now. I noticed in a few of their games they've been playing a back three with Scott Brown playing and at centre back as well, which probably isn't ideal for them. And that's where we've really got to try and look at exploiting them. And I think that's maybe part of the reason why Anderson came off early against Rangers. It's a tough shift at the best of times against the Old Firm, but we do have a very busy run of games coming up, and I think that's probably contributed to him coming off, to have him a little bit fresher for this game against Aberdeen. And I'm sure Bruce will want to go up there and put a performance in and try and grab a goal and show Aberdeen what they're missing as well. So it'll be interesting to see how we set up for the game, whether we persist on going back three again, and considering there's been a couple of reasonable performances playing like that, or if we do go back to kind of a 4-3-3 and see what we can do with that. But yeah, it's a difficult one to call because we've been better away from home this season as well, and the crowd at Pittodrie is quite, when things aren't quite going their way, they can turn on the team very quickly. And I think if we can go up there and frustrate early doors and then try and play on the break, I think there's a good opportunity that we could pick up a result up in Aberdeen. But at the same time, you've mentioned that they've still got quality that can hurt you. You know, Lewis Ferguson in the middle of the park, McGee, Brown, albeit Brown did come off in the game against Celtic, so I assume he'll probably be a doubt for the game. But they've got battling qualities in the middle of the park, and I think one of the things that Aberdeen have done very well against us since we've came up, the fact that we've only beat them the once, which was the game you mentioned there last season, I think Aberdeen have been very good at outdoing us on the battling qualities and winning that side of the game, and then I think their quality has eventually kind of shone through. So I think that's the element that we're going to need to get right on Wednesday night, is we need to win that battle first and foremost, I think, and try and get a foothold in the middle of the park. I think we did that in the game at the start of the season. I think we won that, and certainly at half time we were ahead because of that. You know, we'd got a foothold in the game early doors. So I think it's going to be a very difficult one. How do you see us setting up? Is there any changes you'd maybe like to see? Changing shape, anything like that, Angus?
To be honest, I'd be kind of fine with the same selection. I think the one that we talked about was, you know, what we kind of covered in the Rangers talk, where, you know, Ayo probably comes in and we move Nicky Devlin to right wing back, and probably Jack McMillan drops out. In terms of the personnel, and, you know, we always hear about, you know, the kind of like injuries and stuff that we have, so I'm not really entirely sure who's fully fit, but I think that's the kind of team that you go with. Yeah, thinking of any other options, I think in that midfield battle, I don't think we've got a better suited two than Houghton or Mionga to do that. Maybe there'll be a change in the forward line. I'm not too sure if anybody else, you know, can come in and replace maybe like a Forrest or that, if he thinks that they're, you know, maybe struggling a wee bit. And we've seen Kabaya came back at the weekend. But I think that team that started, if you bring in Ayo, I think is, you know, probably our best side, in all honesty. Maybe there's a toss up at left back as well. That's probably the more interesting one that you could maybe create like an argument about. Maybe like Longridge comes back in, but again, we don't really know what the fitness is with those kind of a players. So but yeah, I'd be kind of happy with that side, and I think that side would, you know, be capable of going to Aberdeen and, you know, picking up a point or that, to be honest with you. What about that left back position? You know, obviously Montano played there against Rangers, Euan. Would you maybe want to see somebody else playing in there and maybe move Montano further forward with, you know, his pace or that, if, you know, the likes of Forrest or that played, you know, the full game, is feeling not up to 100%?
Yeah, I think Montano actually had a good game, to be honest, against Rangers. I think second half there was a handful of times where he broke out from that kind of wing back position, driving forward, and just every so often it was kind of the wrong option. He maybe picked the or whatnot, but he did offer that kind of threat second half. He was probably one of the rare kind of highlights in the second half against Rangers at times, and it'll be interesting to see what we do. Penners is obviously back. There's another option. Again, he's just came back from a hernia op, so again, how fit he is, we're not 100% sure. Obviously not 100% sure what the situation is with Jacko. He's been kind of in and out the side this season because of injuries and little niggles here and there. So yeah, it's a difficult one to call in terms of what personnel will start. As you say, we've had a backlog of injuries this season, so it kind of sometimes has dictated it. But I think there was enough in that performance against Rangers to, argue of going pretty much unchanged and going with the same 11 that started. As you say, you've got Holt and Omiyonga there who are good at doing the dirty work in the middle of the park. So hopefully you're hoping that they can win that, as we say, talking about that midfield battle against Aberdeen and hopefully getting us a foothold in the game, and then allowing the likes of Bailey, Anderson, Forrest to go and do what they do and create opportunities and open Aberdeen up. But I'll push you for a prediction. You were humming and hawing about it earlier on, so I'll push you for one. How do you see this one going?
Since we're playing on grass, I'm just going to have to go for a positive result, aren't we? Because, these plastic pitches are just a joke these days, in all honesty. So, but yeah, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I think it's going to be a very closely contested game. I think that they always are, to be fair, whenever we play Aberdeen. So whenever I feel like there's ever been kind of like a proper one-sided match, maybe other than that one that we won last season, actually. But yeah, I'm confident that we can go there and we can give a good account of ourselves and, can get some points on the board, bring them back down from the Highlands. What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that. I think there's only been 2 games that have been won by more than 1 goal in the games against ourselves in Aberdeen. I think that was the 2-0 in our second season back up, and then our 2-0 win last season. So I think that's the only, as you say, all the games have been very, very tight and toughly contested. I'm starting to look like a bit of a copycat, but yeah, I was kind of going 1-1 as well. I just have a feeling that we are a bit of a threat away from home these days, and I think we can go up there. I think we can go up there, frustrate, get the crowd turning on them, and come back down the road with a positive result and put that Rangers game to bed very quickly. But if you are travelling up to Aberdeen, safe journey up. Hopefully the conditions are a wee bit better than they have been in recent days. So safe journey up, and hopefully everyone's coming back down the road with a positive result.
Finally, look ahead to another tough test as we welcome an informed Hearts side to make the short trip to West Lothian. Euan, how are you feeling ahead of this one?
I'm glad you managed to finally spit that one out, Angus. 3 attempts later, but no, I think it should be an entertaining game. Hearts are certainly an informed team this season. I think we all kind of half expected that Hearts would settle into the top flight quite quickly after last season in the Championship, and they certainly have. The criticism that Robbie Neilson gets kind of looks a bit daft now, considering they're sitting 3rd in the league and just 6 points behind Rangers. So they have had a fantastic start to the season, and the game at Tynecastle is probably, I'd argue, our worst overall performance of the season. We were pretty woeful that day and didn't lay a glove on Hearts. A bit like our games against Rangers, and just wanting us to have a bit of a go at them and give them a bit of a bloody nose and let them know that they've been in a game. But they've had some real star performers this season, especially at the back. Craig Gordon is rolling back the years. He's been superb. John Suter, who obviously has just come back from international duty with a fantastic performance against Denmark, he's been excellent as well. Craig Halkett, who we all know well, Stephen Kingsley, that back 3 have been very, very good for Hearts. And they have a lot of energy in the middle of the park. The lad Cammy Devlin, I think he might have made his debut against us in that game, and he was excellent against us at Beningame as well. Hearts fans have been raving about him, so they're really solid. Hearts. That's the thing I would take from them. They're a really solid side, but they do have creative players as well. Barry Mackay, I think, is a really good signing for them. Gary Mackay-Steven scored at the weekend, and Liam Boyce has had a pretty good start to the season, albeit I think he's missed a handful of games recently through injury. So, they are a very good side, and I think, I can't see anyone finishing above them in terms of for third spot. I think Hearts look like the real deal this season, and as I say, just look like a really solid looking outfit. And it's going to be a very tough game for us. But you joked about it. These artificial pitches, we're not very good on them these days. Normally we like to have games at home because of it, but you almost it's a very difficult one to look at and see a positive result for me, because as I say, I think Hearts are just a very good side this season, and they don't really have what I would look at and say they have a real chink in their armour that you can get at them with, and kind of worries me a little bit, to be honest. I think everyone could sense where my prediction might be going for this game, but what's your take on the game? Hopefully you can look at it a bit more positively than I am, Angus.
I think one of the things that can give us a wee bit of hope going into it is, I think they've drawn the second most games this season. So although they're having like a good start, there is quite a lot of times that they're not kind of doing quite enough to get themselves over the line. I think they went through a wee bit of a run there where it was like 2 wins out of 10. I think they would only lost maybe a couple of them as well, though. So yeah, they are. I think solid is basically the best way to describe them at this moment. But I do think that teams have shown, that you can, kind of get at them. I think they had kind of like tough ties against, like St Johnstone and that lately. I think Motherwell ran them over quite convincingly at Fir Park as well. I think that was kind of an off day for them. So we just kind of got to hope, we give a good counter for ourselves, and then hopefully, that'll take care of itself. But yeah, they are a good team. They've got plenty of strength and depth as well. I think that's kind of what's taken them to that kind of next level this time round. They can take off players and, bring on people who are just, equally as good. I mean, they've got like Janelli, and that can take him off to bring on a Mackay or a Mackay-Steven, for example. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I think we are going to be in for a very, very tough game because, they have kind of hit the ground running in the league this season. But, hopefully they're not. I don't think they're anything, we should be very, very afraid of. I mean, we have to be very wary. We're not giving away like silly free kicks because like Kingsley can punish us. But they've got a lot of threats around the park, which I think is maybe the most concerning thing. Is obviously boys hit the ground running at the start of the season. They've got a lot of players, kind of chipping in the goals now and then. So, but yeah, I feel like I'm maybe a wee bit more positive with you based on the kind of recent performances we've had. I know they've not liked coming to our place, over the years now. Obviously going back to that, tremendous 5-0 victory. But even like after that, where, there's been a couple of, 0-0 draws and whatever. But yeah, looking forward to a good game again. I think it's kind of similar to the Aberdeen match. It's another one where, I think it'll be a closely contested game. And hopefully one that we come out on top of. But yeah, I'll just go straight to you for your prediction. What are you going to say, that gets you the dreaded shame from, our good friend on Twitter?
Yeah, Matt Hay will probably be on at me on Sunday morning. I very much assume that will be the case. I'm going to go 2-1 to Hearts. I just think they'll have a bit too much, as you touched on it there. They've got a big threat from set pieces in terms of Stephen Kingsley's delivery. He scored a cracking free kick at the weekend against St Mirren as well. We've not been great at defending cross balls, so they have plenty of threats in the wide areas and things like that as well. So yeah, I'm going to go 2-1 to Hearts, and I'll deal with the shaming tweets on Twitter. Angus, what about yourself?
I'm just going to make myself look like a saint compared to you. I'm going to go for another draw. I was torn between going, for 2 each, but I think I'm actually just going to go for 0-0. I don't know why 0-0's coming to my head. Absolute crap game, but if I get a point for it, then I'll be sound with that. Hopefully a wee bit warmer than it was at the weekend there, but yeah, I think the last time that we played at the Tony Macaroni Arena, it was a 0-0 game. So let's just see. I'll go for that again to match up.
That 0-0 game. Remember it, Hakeem Odoffin playing up front. Who would have thought? Big Hakeem Odoffin coming on up front. Probably the biggest tactical masterclass I ever saw from Gary Holt. That. Hopefully there's nothing quite as entertaining as that in the game, and it is a boring 0-0 and we can come away with a point. I'd be quite happy with that, to be honest. But yeah, hopefully I'm wrong, you're right, we get a positive result and more points on the board. That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. Thanks again to every single one of you for tuning in, week out. If you can, we'd love to hear your feedback. Either leave us a review on iTunes or simply message us on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram.
As Euan said, we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Search Talk Livi to find us and you'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there as well. You can also find all our episodes, including this one, on all good podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If none of those options suit you though, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you'll find every single episode we've done over the years.
That's it for this week. Thanks again for tuning in as always, and let's hope for another great week following the Lothian's finest football team.
West Lothian is our battle cry. This is the place from which we hail. Livingston, oh Livingston, it's up to Ambervale. Livingston, 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 oh Livingston, oh Livingston, we love it when you score. Livingston, oh Livingston, the Amberville Lions roar. Livingston, oh Livingston, we realize our vision. Livingston, oh Livingston, into the